Good evening and a warm welcome to the Rushcliffe Borough Council's council meeting. I would like to remind everyone that the meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. A recording of the meeting will be available afterwards on the council's YouTube channel. In addition, under the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information England Regulations 2012, other people may film, record, tweet or blog from this meeting. The use of any such images or sound recordings is not under the council's control. May I remind all participants that to ensure the audio for the meeting is as clear as possible, all microphones should be muted as a default setting to keep background noise to a minimum. Any councillor who wishes to speak, please raise your hand via the virtual raised hand. We will follow the usual convention of first asking group leaders if they or their allotted colleague wish to speak on an item. When you are asked to speak by the Mayor, please unmute your microphone by clicking on the microphone symbol on the bottom left of the screen. Once you have spoken, please remute your microphone again. In respect of voting, on items that appear to be uncontentious, I will ask for any councillor to put their virtual hand up if they wish to vote against or abstain. If no one signals, the vote will be taken as carried without the need for a roll call. If a minority signal they wish to vote against or abstain, they will be asked to confirm which, and as long as there is a majority in favour, the vote will be carried without a full roll call. When a roll call is needed, councillors' names will be called out by Mrs. Tambini. In respect of motions, please submit any proposed amendments to motions during the meeting via the chat function to the monitoring officer, Sanjit Sul, me and the Chief Executive. Please also confirm your seconder. Amendments will then be shared to the meeting via PowerPoint for a couple of minutes and will be posted in the chat for your reference during the debate. If anyone wishes to raise a point of order, please do this via the chat function if you can. However, if you are not seen, please inform me. I would now like to move to the first item on the agenda, which will be a moment of reflection, and it will be an audio clip from Mr. Bridge Fakey, who is the ex-chairman of the Hindu temple in Nottingham, and he will lead us in the moment of reflection. A copy of the video will be emailed to all councillors this evening.
So, we're all familiar with the divine statement that in the beginning there was the Word, and that word, according to the Vedas, is Om, which symbolizes creation, sustenance, and dissolution ad infinitum. Om is the primordial vibrational sound of the so-called Big Bang, with which the cosmos comes into being. It denotes the cyclic nature of the law of existence. The covenant is universally applicable.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. We seem to be experiencing technical difficulties. Unfortunately, Mr. Fakey couldn't be here this evening, so it was recorded. But a copy will be sent of the whole.
My name is Bridge Fakey, and I am the ex-chairman of the Hindu Temple of Nottingham. I speak on behalf of the Asian community of Rushcliffe Borough, and in particular the Raka Group, which cares for the welfare of the Asian elderly with help and support from the Rushcliffe Borough Council. We're extremely grateful to the Lady Mayor and the councillors of Rushcliffe Borough Council for their dedicated work. We're all familiar with the divine statement that in the beginning there was the Word, and that word, according to the Vedas, is Om, which symbolizes creation, sustenance, and dissolution ad infinitum. Om is the primordial vibrational sound of the so-called Big Bang, with which the cosmos comes into being, and it denotes the cyclic nature of the law of existence. The covenant is universally applicable to both the material and spiritual realms. Therefore, remember, good days follow bad days. They're also cyclic. And Corona days are not forever either. The second mantra relevant to good decision making is Om Swasti Panthamanu Chirima Surya Chandrama Saviva Punardata Agmuta Janata Sangamenahi. Meaning, we should not swerve from the path of a charitable disposition, perform selfless action, and do our duty just as the sun and moon, without reservation. May we also move in the company of the enlightened and the prudent who show us the path of welfare. There is also a clear message to promote non-violence towards humans, nature, and the entire animal kingdom. To conclude, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Council once again for all their efforts and responsibility for taking key decisions for the community's well-being. May the wisdom and the essence of the Gayatri become the Council's mantra for the county's entire habitat. Thank you.
I think we all heard that, or if not, anyway, there is a copy of the video that will be emailed to all councillors, and it will be a proper video because we were unable to, we only had an audio recording due to more technical difficulties. So first of all, are there any apologies for absence? Mrs. Tambini, could you report, please?
I speak on behalf of the Asian community of
There are no apologies for absence.
Sorry, apologies. I couldn't unmute my microphone. Yes, we have received apologies. I do apologise, Madam Mayor. We've received apologies from Councillor Jenny Murray, from Councillor Leslie Way, and for Councillor Gordon Wheeler.
Thank you, Mrs. Tambini. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, please? It seems not. So next we need to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 16th of July 2020. Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, I'd like to move the approval of those minutes, Madam Mayor.
Do you have a seconder?
And I would like to second them, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Are there any councillors wishing to object to or abstain from this vote? Please indicate your desire to object or abstain by raising your electronic hand. As there are no raised hands indicating a desire to object or abstain, then that is carried. It's time for my announcements. So I have been doing some things despite these circumstances. So there have been some charitable events that I have attended. So very kindly, Georgia Moore and Councillor Gordon Moore offered to have a little fundraising event, which was a special walk around to show us the secrets of Saxondale, which was fascinating. So that took place in August. And then very kindly, Councillor Gray and the Wilford Hill residents had a garden sale that also went to the Mayor's charities. And that I also had some pretty good bargains from that, as well as opening it with a ribbon cutting ceremony. One of the most moving events that I attended was the 75th anniversary of VE Day, which was on the 15th, VJ Day, which took place on the 15th of August, where I laid a poppy wreath with felt poppies and some natural foliage at the Victoria Embankment War Memorial. And following that, there was a very moving service in St Mary's Church in the city, where we did actually sing, the people who were there, but we were all 2 meters apart and all wearing face coverings. Representatives of different countries who were allies with the UK, including India, Pakistan and Nepal, spoke in their own language and also in English before laying wreaths inside the church. It's an incredibly moving experience. Later on, there was the Merchant Navy Day on the 3rd of September, where a flag was raised, the red ensign, at County Hall. There were just a few of us there, but again, it was a very successful flag raising once we'd stopped it from winding round the pole. And it was wonderful to be at that event as well and commemorate those veterans. I've also done some filming for the charities at Skylarks with Knox Wildlife Trust and with the Trent Community District First Responders at the ambulance station in West Bridgford, and also with Music Works in a very beautiful garden and listening to some absolutely lovely music being played. So I do hope that there will be more events where we can raise some money for those charities, and that there will be some other events to attend, I hope. And there's also been some filming done to promote Rushcliffe's wonderful free tree scheme, which took place on the Hook. And if you look at the footage from that, which I believe will be released on Sunday, you'll also see me in my capacity as a member of Friends of the Hook wielding a scythe. So we'll go on now to the leaders' announcements, please. So Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of announcements I'd like to make this evening. First of all, I'd just like to pay tribute to Councillor Mason, who will be stepping down this evening as Deputy Leader and as a Cabinet Member. For those who don't know, Councillor Mason actually was a Cabinet Member for 18 years, which is an awful long time. That's an awful lot of Tuesday nights, getting finery on in cold weather, raining, staying late, listening to endless debates, and certainly in the early days popping over to the Conservative Club for a drink, as I know that she used to. But she was also, of course, Deputy Leader for 3.5 years. And I think the only break in this term actually happened when she actually broke her ankle. She tells me why it was actually in her 13th mile of a run, but I think that's just a rumour, and actually she fell over a step. But in all seriousness, it's a fantastic and wonderful commitment that Councillor Mason shown to this council. I had a presentation this afternoon. Unfortunately, obviously, with the current environment, we couldn't show that, but it was a very nice testament and a small appreciation of what she's actually done. It's been a huge commitment, as I say, and I'd like to personally thank her for her support, her dedication, and certainly the huge service she's given to all the residents of Rushcliffe, because in all her portfolio holdings, community has been at the very, very heart, right across the borough. and it's been an incredible contribution. I think everybody absolutely recognises that, and we very much look forward, however, to working with you in the future through the various committees that you're going to be sitting on, and of course representing the residents of Tollerton within your ward. So a big thank you, Debbie, and a massive appreciation from everybody on this council and from all the residents of Rushcliffe. That's an incredible record that you've achieved with that. I would, Madam Mayor, like to announce that, excuse me, Andy Edivin Councillor Edivin will be Deputy Leader of the Council. I'd also like to announce that Councillor English will take over as the Chairman of the Bingham Growth Board, and that Councillor Abby Brennan will be coming now onto the Cabinet and having the portfolio, as I mentioned at previous meetings, for communities. Lastly, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to mention COVID-19 because I'm sure we're all very aware of the importance that Rushcliffe has to play in this. And it's a fantastic testament to our officers and members at the contribution they're making it, and basically in supporting government policy. Particularly we're seeing with the grants that are being given out to businesses that have been absolutely crucial to their cash flow, to the enforcement and working with our partners. Again, as you've seen the announcements even this week, the enforcement is going to be absolutely crucial if we're going to keep this COVID virus under control. And of course, we've also hosted, as you may have seen, the mobile testing units as well within the arena, which again has been a big help. And will be mentioned later in the budget actually talks is that we're also going to be managing the self-isolation contribution that's made to people on lower incomes, which again is absolutely crucial and is very, very important to our communities at this time of a real crisis. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrenson. Are there any Chief Executive's announcements, please?
No announcements this evening, Madam Mayor.
So there's no announcements, and there are also no citizens' questions. So we'll go on to the COVID-19 budget, which is item 8, and Councillor Moore is to move this motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just check everyone can hear me, because I've had a few issues. Oh, good. Right. Thank you. This report provides a position statement on the budget as a result of COVID, and critically a strategy for how we continue to support the budget and maintain excellent services in what is an ever-changing operational and financial environment. In reports to both Cabinet and Corporate Overview Group, I have shown the figures regarding the expected deficit this year. In March 2020, the Council approved the annual budget. However, COVID has caused financial pressures, particularly loss of income for property and car parks, as well as additional costs in supporting our leisure centres and dealing with antisocial behaviour. Furthermore, as one would expect, there are anticipated reductions in both council tax and business rates collected. These have been reported at previous cabinets, and the amount of government support has also been reported. A number of changes have been made to the budget projections, covering additional costs and reduced income. It really is too early to assume how quickly some form of normality will return both in the short and the medium term. However, prudent estimates have been made upon the level of income expected in line with government guidance. Table 1 of the report is the current budget position as reported to Cabinet and to councillors in the budget update sessions, which most of you attended. Ongoing work is being carried out on income streams and expenditure streams. However, the leisure contract is a big expense. And as they begin to open fully, we continue to review their position, particularly as the situation locally surrounding COVID is so fluid. Most councils are similarly struggling with leisure provision. And I know recently Peterborough Council have had to bring their leisure and cultural services in-house. The expectation is that as revenue returns, the support package will be reduced. We are expecting an adverse budget impact in excess of £1 million over the financial year. I've discussed the capital programme earlier with Cabinet and other councils, But now Bingham, the new Bingham Centre is out to tender, and there is significant movement on the Abbey Road development. These two are positive signs, and this further demonstrates the council's commitment that the local economy continues to grow. The capital programme stands at £38 million, and that is a significant amount to invest in the local economy. The report discusses the repayment policy for the arena, and this is supported by the government's group who've seen it, and this will give officers flexibility to extend the repayment period of the arena if needed, freeing up cash for the budget. Table 2 in the report shows the revised transformation policy. An additional savings target of £500,000 has been included based on efficiencies and increased income. Item 4.8 and table 3 is a good example why constant updating of the budget and monitoring the impact of the risks is important. The left-hand column shows our current projection. The right-hand column shows a worst-case scenario. Our current scenario is a deficit of 422,000. But the worst-case scenario, if we get a second wave, is £1.7 million deficit. Let's hope this doesn't happen. Table 4 details the effect on the medium-term financial strategy and also details the strategy for dealing with both current and legacy issues of COVID. Now, the leaders mentioned this earlier, but Appendix D deals with our hardship fund policy, with a recommendation of a figure of £250 maximum per claim. This report shows an increase this year as we expect to deal with 2,300 hardship claims in terms of council tax. This is going a long way to help our more vulnerable residents who have been badly hit financially by this epidemic. The council remains open for business and continues to help businesses by ensuring that over 1,800 businesses have received government grants. I'm pleased to say we have now paid out 18.3 million in business grants and the best part of 1 million in discretionary grants, total of 19.3 million to businesses who have been struggling with the pandemic. We do appreciate the business environment remains challenging, and we will continue to do what we can with the resources we have to continue to support the business community. As I've stated before, the position regarding COVID is fluid. This week has been testament to that, and it's good to see yet again an efficient, resident-focused district council such as Rushcliffe has been given the responsibility and trust to allocate further grants of up to £1,500 to businesses if there is a local lockdown. We have also been tasked with distributing grants of up to £500 known as task and trace support grants to individuals on low incomes who have to self-isolate. This will be effective from next week. Fortunately, we have excellent staff who can deliver these grants quickly despite their huge workload. I must emphasize the most important thing is that those in need, both individuals or businesses, get support in these most difficult of times. And I can assure you, we will deliver on this. The work of the growth boards, as already been mentioned by the leader, will continue to be an important interface between the council, the community and businesses in difficult times. Whilst times are challenging, I'm pleased to say this is a well-managed council who has managed its resources well and always held a healthy level of reserves, which in the short term enables us to manage our way through this economic crisis whilst delivering our corporate objectives. However, we cannot be complacent and we will continue to look hard at our business efficiencies. Government funding has been most welcome. However, it's important to be aware there is a limit to how much support the government can afford in the future. Obviously, there's been some announcements today on further support, and obviously that's just news that's breaking now. The recommendations in the report, I'd like to propose the recommendations. I will read them in a moment. But I'd particularly like to thank Peter Linfield and his team. I've had wall-to-wall meetings with Peter and his team recently, and they really have worked incredibly hard, because not only are they doing their normal job, but they've had all these grants, discretionary grants and everything else to deal with. And I'd also like to thank the councillors who have been out there helping, finding vulnerable people, finding businesses, for the support. We look to meet such significant challenges head on as a team, and I go right across the political aspect there. So I'd like to read the recommendations. The recommendations are the revised projections to the 2021 revenue budget and the remainder of the current MTFS as a result of the impact of COVID-19, the revised projections in the capital programme for 2021 and the impact on the capital programme, the changes to the transformation strategy, the council tax hardship fund policy, the strategy of utilising in-year budget efficiencies, the organisation's stabilisation reserve, reviewing the use of existing reserves, reduced use of voluntary revenue position and therefore use of new homes bonus as fiscal levers so the council can balance the budget and delivers its corporate objectives. And the transfer of 3 reserves totalling just over £500,000 to the organisation's stabilisation reserve from 2021 on the revised anticipated position over the next 5 years. So, members of the council, Madam Mayor, I'm very happy to move those recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I believe Councillor Robinson wishes to second.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to say a few words. Clearly, as you've seen, this authority, like every other council, has never been tested like it has at the present under this pandemic, and that's reflected in the budget decisions that haven't had to be taken. It is a great testament, not just to finance, but I think right across our council, for all the officers who work incredibly hard in all their departments to make sure that we are showing the resilience and wherever possible continuing services as normal. It is without question a very, very unique time. As Councillor Moore mentioned, leisure in particular is probably the hardest hit, and it's obviously a major cornerstone of our whole policy and our strategy, if you like, for residents, is to absolutely ensure we have the very best of leisure. The Chief Executive and myself have made representations to ministers for support for our leisure. We're still waiting, but we're hopeful, we keep our fingers crossed, there will be something coming, because then we all appreciate how important it is for health and well-being and the importance our leisure centres play in the communities that are out there. I'd just like to remind members we are debt-free, and coming into this pandemic, that has been a huge strength for us not to have the interest payments around our neck, so we can focus our revenue budgets on where it really matters, and that's absolutely been out there. I'd also just like to remind members, Madam Mayor, of our ambitions for capital. As Councillor Moore mentioned, at 38.4 million, and that includes projects such as the Bingham Hub, the crematorium, and of course the Abbey Road development as well. And I'm absolutely committed that we drive this council to deliver these fantastic capital projects, because these really will show growth. They show growth to the economy, but they also have a very significant assistance to our communities and to all our residents. So, Madam Mayor, I'd like to second those recommendations as put forward by Councillor Moore on page 19 to A to F. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Gray. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Gray? I think you're on mute.
Sorry, just finding my speech now. I'll put it off to the side. So the Labour Group would like to thank Councillor Moore and the finance team for this updated budget report. We appreciate the time and effort put into not only the document and the work behind it, but also for the workshops that were arranged to bring members up to speed with the current position before its presentation to Council. I expect this won't be the last of these reports, as it seems the ever-shifting sands of this country's COVID response have shifted again. Considering the new rules in place, I think we should wonder how long it will be till we're looking at a greater spend, perhaps to help prop up our leisure provider. Obviously, this is a big concern, and it's outlined in the report. Also, our capital spend was mentioned, and particularly by Councillor Robinson there, who also mentioned that we are currently debt free. Our capital spend would look to move us out of that position, and one wonders how we would be differently placed if this crisis were to have happened a couple of years down the line when we were carrying a debt which was attached to our leisure providers. So perhaps it means we should think strongly on how we should pause to think actually how we operate within the leisure sector. As a group, we'd also like to take the opportunity to thank all of the council's employees who've worked so very hard during the COVID crisis to deliver all of the services that Councillor Moore outlined in this report. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Jones, do you wish to speak?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thanks very much. And thanks to all the staff involved in the lead up to the report, and particularly to the finance staff who are having to show such flexibility in issuing the various grants and now the new targeted support that has been mentioned. And the issues in the report are very complex, the financial situation very tight, and our use of reserve funds not tenable forever. It's a good job in this report that there is slippage in the capital projections for the CREM and the Bigham Leisure Centre. Given that there is no foreseeable end to the impact of COVID, in fact, the increase is gathering pace, and one imagines that there's likely to be further restrictions. The massive cost to the council of funding leisure centres so that it can survive is evident currently, and I doubt very much whether their income is going to be that great for the foreseeable future. One does have to ask, given the uncertainty about the impact of the virus for a very long time in the foreseeable future, whether it is sensible to further slow the plans for the extra leisure centre so that subsidies by the council are not increased. Is it wise to build a leisure centre to not operate it and possibly mothball it, let alone the enormous debts that are likely to be incurred? The other ongoing cost, which is evident in the report, which stands out, is the relocation from the Abbey Road depot to Eastcroft. Having sold yet another West Bridgford asset, the report shows we are faced with annual extra costs of over $250,000. And one does have to ask, is that reasonable, or are there alternatives? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Mallandy, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I too would like to put forward the Green Group's thanks to the officers for the extremely hard work they've done, and to the councillors involved, particularly Gordon Moore, who has worked very hard getting all this together as well. We're in extraordinary times, and as such, the finances of the country and this council are in an extraordinary state. But it's good to know that we're all working together to do the best for the people of Rushcliffe. I'm particularly pleased to see that the climate change reserve has been maintained in the proposals that we've got before us this evening. This is an ongoing crisis, and there's something that we will have to deal with and continue to address long after this terrible pandemic is a memory. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mallandy. Councillor Thomas, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Shaw will be responding on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We wish to add our thanks to the officers and portfolio holders and councillors for their diligent work on this in an ever-changing situation. We don't think any further comment is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moore, would you like to have a right of reply, please?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just two very quick points, really. We are determined to develop Bingham Leisure Centre. I will admit there might be a little bit of slippage because of the slowing down in the tendering process and one thing or another. but we are determined, we are committed. And I just think that somehow in life, during this crisis, you've got to be positive. And I think it would be too easy to pull the plug on this one. We're crunching the numbers at the moment. It's looking doable. And I think that we should remain positive and just hope that this COVID thing goes away within the next 18 months or so. Regarding the relocation costs at Abbey Road, obviously you're aware we're developing the site and there will be significant capital receipts generated to cover those sort of costs. I think that's all I have to say, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Are there any councillors wishing to object or abstain from this vote? Please indicate your desire to object or abstain by raising your electronic hand. I can't see anyone, so there are no raised hands indicating desire to object or abstain, so the motion is carried. So we now move on to the scrutiny annual reports 2019-20, and Councillor Robinson is to move, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I move the motion, I'll ask the chairman of the scrutiny groups to present their report. So if we could start, please, with Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Councillor Robson, and thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm delighted to be able to present the annual scrutiny report for the Community Scrutiny Group. As you'll see from the report, we've had a productive year, scrutiny topics including young, positive futures, the carbon management plan, community facilities within West Bridgford, fly tipping and the waste strategy, to name a few. I am particularly pleased by the items brought to us by members of this council, including items on fly tipping, dog fouling and the use of fireworks at Borough Council events. I really hope we can see more of these going forward. Officer support has been invaluable, and I would especially like to thank David Banks and Laura Webb for their support this year. I'd also like to especially thank members of the scrutiny group for their excellent contributions throughout every meeting, and of course my Vice Chairman Bal Bansal for his support and work over this year. And I look forward to working with all members of the group going forwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask Councillor Clark, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And yes, we too have had a very interesting and varied year. We looked at 6 issues, Abbey Road. We looked at the 7 issues listed on page 70, and we all agreed we look forward to an innovative development. SIL, this was welcomed, however, I'm not sure how long it's actually going to be around, dependent on the outcome of the Planning for the Futures white paper. Business supports, given the small resources available, we have given valued support to business. Regrettably, this was all before COVID started to impact on our business lives. Regarding vibrancy in town centres, we welcomed how vibrant Rushcliffe town and parish centres are compared with other parts of the country, with continuing high occupancy rates. We looked at open spaces and the ongoing issues, and these will be brought back at a later date. And COVID-19, this has had a profound and ongoing impact, as we've already heard in the previous item. As in the report, we would like to commend officers and workforce for all the hard work that they put in on our behalf. My thanks to all the councillors for their contributions, but finally, my sincere thanks to my Vice Chairman, Councillor Abby Brennan, for all her support and contributions, and I wish her well in her new cabinet role. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Purdue-Horan.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very pleased to present the annual report of the Governance Scrutiny Group for 2019-2020. Councillors will have had the opportunity to read the annual report itself, so I won't labour its contents and repeat the text, except to say governance and its related responsibilities are constant tasks, and a well-run council like Rushcliffe is no accident. It takes hard work and commitment to achieve high quality outcomes and results on behalf of our residents. And of course, all of that would take place in normal times. The additional challenge of this unprecedented pandemic came down the road on us all like a hurricane, and the extra efforts that were put into preparing the reports and this annual report is acknowledged. Madam Mayor, I wish to record our thanks to our third-party partners who have assisted Rushcliffe Borough Council in these tasks, including Mr. Williams and Mr. Ali and their team at RSM, who acted as our internal auditors for, I think, over a decade. Their attention to detail and professionalism has been outstanding. And the only reason Rushcliffe Borough Council have changed our internal auditors recently is that it is considered good practice to do so after some years. And Rushcliffe Borough Council have now engaged BDO as our new internal auditors from April 2020. May I also thank our executive managers, Peter Linfield and Leanne Ashmore, and their team in providing excellent support and detailed reports and information to the Governance Scrutiny Group members. It is very much appreciated, especially at this time. And finally, Madam Mayor, I wish to thank my Vice Chair, Councillor Jem Walker, and our fellow councillors on the Scrutiny Group for their constructive and dedicated application to the work that we've undertaken over the last 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask Councillor Comblack, please?
Just realised I'm still muted. Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Madam Mayor. You've read a very comprehensive report on the work of the scrutiny groups and just heard enthusiastic and informative comments from the group chairman. To say this has been a challenging year is no understatement. Implementing the change in the scrutiny process and then hitting the health crisis. Transition from one administrative process to another is difficult at the best of times. The beginning of the process saw a programme of comprehensive training for all council members on the new procedures, and it would seem from the recent survey I circulated that the majority of councillors understand the process and are able to readily interact with the scrutiny groups. The scrutiny process is transparent and cohesive. Councillors, cabinet, officers and residents are having greater involvement as we act as a team seeking the same objectives to deliver the best possible service for Rushcliffe. Important pieces of work included the corporate strategy, which provided for lively proactive debate, contributing to the final structure of the strategy, helping shape the needs and tasks to be undertaken by Council to 2023, especially around the environment, the lifeblood of our nation's future. Interesting and relevant items have been proposed for scrutiny, providing informed debate in the respective groups. Scrutiny going forward may see work programmes subject to change as we closely monitor the economic, social, health and community impact of the COVID virus. We have, however, demonstrated through performance scrutiny and customer feedback that we have so far been a very resilient council. Prudent investment and resourcing have stood us in good stead, with Rushcliffe faring a great deal better than many others. So the scrutiny groups will go forward with the new structure for scrutiny, continuing to respond proactively to the needs of Rushcliffe residents. I look forward to meeting the challenges of the year and thank all group members for their enthusiastic support. And I would particularly like to thank the officers who have so valiantly handled the ever-changing demands on their time and provided all the informative reports. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'd just like to add my thanks to all the chairmen for their work. Scrutiny is so important, and as Councillor Comblack said, we've moved to a new scrutiny matrix, and that is really to reflect the demands of the authority and certainly myself and the Chief Executive. really thought it was time to that change was needed, and I'm delighted the contribution, particularly the chairman, have made. I'd also like to really thank all political parties and all their members for the excellent work they've done across scrutiny. As I said, it's been really important at this time. It's very challenging, and that sort of feedback, the scrutiny to make us accountable, I think is what makes Rushcliffe a very, very, very well run council. So, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to move the recommendations on page 43, basically endorsing the work of the 4 scrutiny groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Mason, I believe you wish to second.
Yes, I wish to second the recommendation and just say thank you to all those that have been dealing with scrutiny over the past year. I'd also like to thank Councillor Tina Cumberlack for bringing it all together, because that is an important role, so that they can all work together, and some things are cross-cutting, and I think that has been very productive. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Councillor Walker will give our response.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Scrutiny is an essential part of a functioning democracy and leads to more effective decision-making, reduces risk, and ultimately improves outcomes for the people we're here to represent. The Labour Group would very much like to endorse the work that's been undertaken by all the groups, and would like to see the continued evolution and progression of what can be done through this process. We thank Councillor Cumberlack and all the members and officers who work so hard to make it run smoothly. Improving the communication and links between Cabinet and scrutiny is essential, and we would encourage the members of our Cabinet to attend our scrutiny meetings, allowing scrutiny members to get to the nitty-gritty of why decisions are made. We feel that the opening up and sharing of why decisions are made will lead to a better understanding for all members, and ultimately, we hope, the understanding will also filter down to our residents. The willingness to engage the public in our scrutiny process excites us as a group, and we feel engage more people in the democratic process. We would welcome improvements to the way interest groups from outside the council structure are invited to engage in our scrutiny process. Perhaps the process is not as clear as it could be, and we need to look at how and when it's appropriate for the public intervention to take place. The topics being discussed are eclectic, and they range from massive topics such as carbon reduction to the more day-to-day topic of dog muck. A cultural change that comes from the top and values and embraces the work done at scrutiny, that encourages member involvement, is required as engagement from members remains low. At the moment, not many councillors are using the scrutiny process, and most are not submitting matrices. And this is a shame, because it would really bring about the changes that are needed in our communities. It does appear that many political groups are strongly influenced by their leadership, so the engagement of the leadership team could see a shift in how scrutiny is viewed and embraced. It would be refreshing to see more matrices being brought forward about the issues in our differing wards, and the Labour Group would wholeheartedly welcome this. Finally, I can attest to the good working relationships within the group as Vice Chair of Governance Scrutiny. We're all finding our feet in the new groups and all remain open to the flexibility and the cross-party cooperation offered by scrutiny, both often in short supply in local government. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, in our experience, the scrutiny groups and the topics have been very relevant, very interesting, and there's been wide engagement. And as has been mentioned, that reflects members working together across parties as well. I do think, and it's been touched upon already, that there's a point in the corporate overview group where there's a debate started about options for public engagement. And in general, I think the council should still seek to increase our openness and involvement of interested residents and their respective groups. I'm hoping that the West Bridgford Special Expenses and SIL group will engage with community groups, both explaining council services and choices ahead. What I would like to see, despite the vibrancy and the relevance of the topics covered so far, it's very much officers answering for those topics. And members present when the new structure was proposed by the external review group and was accepted, members will know that a major reason was to scrutinise cabinet plans and decisions rather than just topics to refer to cabinet later. And I do think that that shift should start to occur a bit more. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Mallender, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it was a few years ago now that we looked at changes to our scrutiny structure on Rushcliffe, and it's been really good that we've actually managed to carry this programme through and have a better, more effective version of scrutiny than I think we had before. As previous councillors have mentioned, part of that was a move to perhaps give more emphasis to the cabinet members' decision making, so that we could actually scrutinise those. And it would be good for, I think, to see some cabinet members scrutinised at the scrutiny group meetings. It's the only real part of that review that is actually missing. I think it's good that we continue to have scrutiny as part of our risk management process. We do need to be mindful of how well we engage with external bodies and with members of the public as well. Perhaps the member of the public engagement could be stronger than we've had to date. I would like to thank Councillor Cumberlack for the work she's done in seeking out the opinions and views of other councillors to see how we can continue to make scrutiny a more effective process. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. We would like to thank all the officers and members involved in scrutiny and for the opportunity recently to contribute our views on the process. We really do hope going forward that scrutiny can be developed to become less of an inward-looking rubber stamping exercise with more interaction and engagement with the councillors at large, members of the public, outside bodies and the cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? In that case,
Councillor Clark.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in quick response to Councillor Richard Mallender's comments, which I totally agree. Regarding cabinet members, watch this space. We might be inviting cabinet members to come and participate fairly soon.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Sure, they'll be overjoyed.
Councillor Robinson, would you like to have your right of reply, please?
Yeah, just to say thank you for your comments, and say I think there's been a lot of appreciation from everybody about the amount of work done. And I'd also just like to address that Councillor Mallender said right from day one that cabinet members and myself have always been available to go to any scrutiny meetings, and I think that's a very important part of the jigsaw. And when we had the external people in, they said that was very, very important. So we're willing and very, very happy to attend any of the meetings on any relevant topics that you'd like to discuss with us.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Are there any councillors wishing to object to or abstain from this vote? Please indicate your desire to object or abstain by raising your electronic hand.
I think Debbie's is a legacy.
I think there is one hand up, but it's a legacy, Councillor Mason. As there are no raised hands indicating a desire to object or abstain, then that is carried. So item 10, which is a notice of motion. And so the first motion is from Councillor Robinson, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that's being shared now. Are we sharing the motion on the screen? Just as something come up, just as those?
Yes, Councillor Robinson, we're just trying to do that now.
Ah, lovely. Okay. Okay, I won't read out. You've all had in your papers. It's all on the screen there now. I just want to stress to members, this has been brought really about protecting the public. It's about protecting people employed within the local authorities, and also our businesses as well within local authorities. I think everyone would agree that since 2010, the government, the coalition government, and then the Conservative government have encouraged all local authorities to be much more competent in raising their own funds and income streams through being much more commercially knowledgeable, aware, and making really these income streams actually work. And what I will say, and I actually think it actually made a mistake, because it actually did it on trust. It actually trusted local authorities to have the right governance, to have the right people in place, to manage commercial expansion, to generate their income, and reflect the complete financial mess we're in that got inherited in 2010. And the lack of guidance, I think, and governance that was insisted upon in authorities was a big, big mistake. And we're paying for it now. But I'm absolutely delighted that Rushcliffe took up that trust and has absolutely delivered. And I'm delighted we've just been talking about the scrutiny groups, for instance, all cross-party, making the council accountable for its investments and its commercial activities. We have an asset investment board which manages all our investments and manages risk, and has made a very, very successful portfolio, really working well for us. Our officers have undergone a lot of commercial training with Institute of Directors over the last few years to infuse within them the commercial nous. We've also used external consultants when they've been required for their expertise. And at the heart of everything that Rushcliffe has done on this commercial stream is that this is public money. I say again, this is public money. It's not mine, it's not yours, it is absolutely taxpayers' money. And the government actually trusted us. I couldn't have been any prouder when I received, on behalf of Rushcliffe, the Commercial Council of the Year and the Entrepreneurial Council of the Year, because this actually reflected the uniqueness and the success that Rushcliffe has had in delivering its commercial strategies, and delivered investments such as Bridgeford Hall, such as the Cotgrave Regeneration Scheme, the Arena, and a very successful business and a very profitable business of Streetwise. And unfortunately, as I said right at the start of bringing this motion, this is about protecting the public. And as we've seen in recent announcements, what's happened in Bristol, and particularly more closer to us, Nottingham City, with their investments. Councillor Brennan will be seconding this motion, bringing more details. But let's just talk about Robin Hood Energy as a classic case of the complete lack of governance accountability that has racked up debts in excess of £60 million in a council with debts of over £1.1 billion. You heard me right, ladies and gentlemen, debts of over £1.1 billion from our Labour friends across the border. And their response is, let's set up Robin Hood Energy, provide cheap energy, and by the way, we've just lost you another £60 million. I quote from Grant Thornton, the auditor, who looked into Robin Hood Energy. This is not how local authorities should look after large amounts of public money. The second quote accused the authority and the politicians there of complete institutional blindness in managing their risk. When I said about this motion about protecting taxpayers, it's also about protecting people's employment. Over 230 people are losing their jobs now because of decisions made by our Labour politicians over at Nottingham City. And it's actually close to Rushcliffe, because in fact, I've got members of that workforce in Ed Walton. I spoke to one last weekend, a very senior manager at Robin Hood Energy who's losing his job. And I quote you exactly what he said to me about it. about the arrogance and the contempt that was shown by politicians to the staff who were trying to run that business and provide cheap energy. And of course, we know, of course, that energy was going to the millionaire Jeremy Corbyn. So they're absolutely delighted to see the taxpayers of Nottingham City subsidising Jeremy Corbyn's energy. The same at Bristol as well, and the same, more details is that Councillor Brennan will actually be providing with this. So this is the reality about protecting the taxpayers, the businesses, the employees, and that we implore the government to actually set very strong guidelines, just like I've talked about with Rushcliffe, to make sure that councils, particularly Labour councils, who seem so addicted to spending other people's money and wasting it on futile ideological projects such as trying to supply energy below cost, trying to make markets which didn't exist. Because that is the reality if you don't provide that sort of governance and the care around these authorities. So I bring this motion, as I say, I criticise our own government. They should have got this right. They didn't, and we're paying the price now. And I really pity those taxpayers and people like Bristol and Nottingham who are picking up this bill. And I'm sure Councillor Gordon, who likes to lecture us about government cuts, will have an awful lot to say about where that £60 million could have been spent in schools. So I'd like to move this motion, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Brennan, you're seconding the motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Robinson. Yes, I'm very happy to second this important and very timely motion. We know that local government is facing a challenging time. We've just heard about the impacts on our budgets, even in a very well managed council. Resources are at a premium, and the delivery of frontline services in the face of this pandemic is potentially under threat. The pandemic has left many councils weaker, and it's really vital now that national government steps in to ensure that councils understand better how to manage risks and ensure proper oversight of their activities. This must happen now. Frankly, it's been a bit of a revelation, if not a shock, to discover the extent to which councils have apparently used scarce public resources to pursue what are often ideological objectives through the creation of companies operating in complex markets that neither the council nor the councillors have any experience of or expertise in. We talked about, Councillor Robinson mentioned Bristol Energy, an ill-judged foray into the green energy market by Labour-led Bristol City Council. It was established in 2015, and the council pumped some £35 million into this failing project, which has just posted losses of £32.5 million. Following an audit by Ernst & Young, the council's now been forced to sell off the company's customer base at a further loss. And as Councillor Robinson said, we only have to look at a local level across the River Trent at Nottingham City Council's Labour administration and the terrible waste of public money and the loss of jobs caused by the regrettable fiasco that is Robin Hood Energy. Ironically, residents of Nottingham City are likely to be paying out more in council tax and facing a reduction in the services they benefit from, way beyond any savings in energy costs that might have been accrued to them by Robin Hood Energy. The sums in excess of £60 million in losses are, quite frankly, eye-watering. And as Councillor Robertson mentioned, that even pales into insignificance now when we understand that the council is carrying over £1 billion of unsustainable debt. The figures are just absolutely incomprehensible. And guess what? Just like Bristol, the current Labour administration has blamed the previous Labour administration. The former Chief Executive of Nottingham City Council has offered his resignation from his new role as Chair of the Children's Trust, and yet not a single councillor has seen fit to stand down and take responsibility for what happened with Robin Hood Energy. It surely can't be right that local authorities with no competence, expertise, or experience of running complex businesses, with whatever laudable objectives many of them start out with, can attempt to book the market, to undercut commercial operators, and apparently dip into taxpayers' money pretty much at will to do so. Councillor Robinson mentioned that local government needs to be entrepreneurial and creative. It's quite right that judicious investment, properly overseen, subject to ongoing review and value for money assessment, allow councils to generate additional funds to deliver enhanced services to our local communities. At Rushcliffe Borough Council, we, for example, have in place a very clear asset management plan. It's regularly reviewed and it's publicly available. It's transparent and open. As an entrepreneurial council, we welcome this freedom to invest wisely and prudently for our local area. There is, though, a huge difference between prudent investment to generate income for services and setting up of complex companies, often with political or ideologically driven objectives, however worthy some of them might be, that can operate at a loss for longer than any market-facing company could possibly do, using taxpayers' money to bail them out, apparently without challenge or without proper oversight. National government must now provide clear guidance on risk management and proper governance to those councils that intend to take part in commercial ventures or create not-for-profit companies that attempt to compete on the open market. In these challenging times, it's even more imperative that local council taxpayers' money and jobs are better protected. I'm therefore very happy to second this motion, Madam Mayor.
Apologies, Councillor Brennan. We just have something to discuss. Sorry. Okay, so Councillor Gray, would you like to speak, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Labour Group supports the text presented in this motion. My guess beforehand was that perhaps we wouldn't be quite so supportive of everything Councillor Robinson and Councillor Brennan said in their supporting speech, which, to be honest, I expected Councillor Robinson to deliver with his usual sledgehammer-like wit and brick-like subtlety. It's shameful to say that according to the Institute of Fiscal Studies, councils with the greatest need for things like adult social care and those most dependent on government grants were hit hardest in 2010 by austerity, seeing both their budgets cut and their needs for services drastically increased. Councils where 33% in every pound of their budget is spent on social care were at the same time effectively told, get on your bike. Some councils needed to make investments, invest fast, and perhaps move quickly than was prudent. We're reminded of the often repeated phrase that the value of your investment may go down as well as up, and that risk and reward go hand in hand. Unfortunately, those who were required to make the greatest return on investment were also those required to take the greatest risk. Powers given to councils, as Councillor Robinson so rightly points out, and the unclear governance and risk management guidance created a situation which could have been avoided if funding had not been cut so hard, so fast, and so unevenly across councils in the UK. We've already tonight seen our own reports on our scrutiny. And I think we know how and why we must change our arrangements so that members are empowered and confident to question and investigate the decisions made by leader, cabinet, and the controlling group. It would not be difficult to see how a bullish leader, a tight-knit cabinet, and a hefty majority could make a decision and take us down a path without proper oversight. Easy to see the fault of others, but it's hard to see our own. It is clear that strong governance and risk management guidance is needed, whilst councils are pushed into the brutal world of market forces. A simpler solution would perhaps be to allow council to concentrate on what they know best, and that is providing services for taxpayers. By restoring central government grant and therefore avoiding the predicted 7.8 billion national budget gap predicted by 2025. COVID-19 has exposed many more councils to risk than they would have expected. Even Rushcliffe, and tonight we've just detailed this, has had to support a private company with £1 million worth of taxpayers' money to maintain its leisure provision. And we need to be mindful that even Rushcliffe has only so much family silver. And that's our piece.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support the request for the government to introduce better governance and risk controls. I think it's rather sad that in a fairly well-endowed area, and yes, with well-controlled budget and investment processes, that has to be made a political point scoring against adjacent Labour councils. You only have to read Private Eye to realise that there is corruption and wasted expenditure in councils of all political persuasions. And I just think it's not very good to put yourself up by putting somebody else down. You should also have regard to this slogan-ridden, inconsistent and underperforming and throwing out money government. You're associated with this, and it's not doing particularly well. But going back to the point in the motion, I mean, the government has screwed councils to the ground in the name of the now abandoned austerity. Rate support grant was reduced to nil, and councils' ability to raise local tax has been capped. So councils are really controlled by central government in a strange sort of way without the guidance. So to encourage people to resort to commercialism is a major risk, and sometimes it pays off and sometimes it doesn't. It's not a sensible way to fund public services. It's not an efficient way, as occurs in Germany, where people have the local latitude to make those decisions themselves within a framework. So the notion in the motion is fine, but I really object to this putting yourself up by putting people down. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Mallender.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, as others have said, the text of the motion is fine. I think that what we've got here, clearly in the case of some other local authorities, is a failure of scrutiny and a failure of risk management, and a failure by parties who have perhaps been in possession of overweening majorities to think that they can always know best on behalf of their residents, and perhaps just a few people in those authorities to think that they know the best, know better than some of their fellow councillors. And I think that what we've had in some of these other authorities is a warning that we need to heed, and that other authorities around the country need to heed as well. I think it's also worth noting that what was carried out with these energy companies isn't a bad idea per se. We're being encouraged to be commercial as local authorities. We're being encouraged to have a commercial head on all the time by government. Well, that means that some commercial ventures succeed and some fail. That's the way of the world in business. Conservatives should understand that, being the party of business as it very much is. And I think that we have to understand that local authorities need to have the competence, not just the commercial competence, but also the competence of well-trained councillors who actually understand how business works. And if they don't understand how business works, then they need to understand how to ask the right questions at scrutiny to make sure that the right decisions are being taken. Clearly, there's been some failures around the country, but there have been successes as well. And I don't want us to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, hey, council shouldn't do anything commercial ever again. I think that would be a foolish move too. So yes, I would support the wording of the motion, but I do think some of the hubris and the speechifying being made earlier was a bit over the top for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This motion appears to be politically motivated simply to point a finger at another council. It seems to be easy to think of the risks of commercial activity in terms of other councils and not ourselves, but it's definitely something that our officers' cabinet and councillors need to keep at the forefront of our minds at all times. I would like to propose an amendment to the motion, please.
Do you have the text, please?
I have attempted to put the text in the chat, but I can't get it to the mayor.
I can see it printed out. Can everyone see it though?
Does she have a seconder?
And do you have a seconder, please?
Yes, Councillor Jones is seconding.
Okay.
Sorry, Councillor Jones. No. Which I'm just trying to see which text this goes into, which section of text.
I think we need the next page of the slide.
Yeah, sorry.
We're just getting the next page of the slide up.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so the green text is proposed to be put in, and the red text to be removed. Is that correct? Is that what the proposal is? Apart from the top section, as far as I understand it, this is out of order because it is completely changing the, had it been something that made a difference to the comment on risk management and clearer governance, that would be acceptable. But in here we're asking for something completely different. It completely changes the motion's meaning. So I'm afraid it looks like this is out of order.
So we can't accept the
So
amendment.
I'm afraid we
but
can't accept it.
But she can continue with her.
But you can continue with your discussion and perhaps make the same points which you've put in the amendment, please.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I have finished what I wanted to say.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Councillor Robinson, do you wish to respond to the debate, please?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just address some of the points that have been made and pretty expected about lack of funding for councils, and yeah, we could debate this for hours and hours and hours. And I just want to make the point that these energy companies were actually not for profit, so they're absolutely nothing to do with about making money. So I think you need to understand that. So that's nothing to do with lack of government funding. It's purely done by ideology. Both of the energy companies were not set up to make money, but they weren't set up to make over £100 million worth of losses as well. So just to correct that, what was actually said. I didn't realise private eye was the current Bible for economics within councils, but obviously Councillor Jones thinks it is, quoting various things from there. And I think lastly, Councillor Malinder, Conservatives are the party for business. So I'm glad he's actually said that. I'm glad it's been recorded, because absolutely right. And I do go back to Rushcliffe, and you said, Councillor Mander, some fell, some win. Well, actually, Rushcliffe win. Yeah, and not because we have a fantastic leader or a great cabinet, is that because we have excellent processes, we have very good scrutiny, and we make the right decisions. We turn down a lot of investments. We turn down a lot of projects because we manage proportionate risk. And that is why we're successful. And that is why we look after taxpayers' money, because this isn't actually about us. It's not about the Conservatives, Labour, Greens, or whatever. It's about taxpayers' money. And Councillor Jones, you're talking about putting people down. I'm talking about a council that's just lost tens and tens of millions of pounds of public money. People's money will go out to work, that's just gone. And in parallel to this, has run up a debt of 1.1 billion. So I'll tell you what, I'm not going to apologise for bringing that council to account.
So we have a point of order. Was it Councillor Gray?
Yes, but point of order. We should really be addressing the mayor in this, not shouting at other members across Zoom. Thank you very much.
Yes, I agree. Could you direct you are nearly out of time actually as well.
Okay, well that's right now. It's fine, man. I just want to say, apologise for addressing. I was just addressing the points that were actually made, and I'm sorry. I get very emotional about this because I know when I talk to people who are losing their jobs, Councillor Gray, it is very emotional. And perhaps you ought to perhaps speak to them in your ward as well, that are going to lose their jobs at the City Council and Robin Energy as well. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Nothing more to say.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Are there any councillors wishing to object or to abstain from this vote? Please indicate your desire to object or abstain by raising your electronic hand.
Councillor Thomas. Just Councillor Thomas, so we need to ask her if she would like to. No, it's not
So
there.
I believe Councillor Thomas, what would are you abstaining or objecting?
I'm abstaining, thank you, Mayor.
Abstaining. And Councillor Shaw, I believe?
Abstaining.
Abstaining. Is there anyone else?
No.
But
the motion's carried.
the vote, the motion will be carried with those 2 abstentions recorded. Okay, so now we have the notice of motion to be put to the council by Councillor Gaunt and seconded by Councillor Jen Walker. And I understand that Councillor Gaunt wishes to amend a typographical error within the motion. Is that correct?
Yes, please, yeah, if possible.
So could you confirm what the correction is? We'll proceed to a vote immediately, accepting the correction before you present your motion.
Okay, in the second paragraph where it says zones 1 to 3, I should obviously say zones 2 to 3, otherwise it's reducing any ability to build anywhere. So it was meant to say 2 to 3. It's just a typographical error that was sent across.
Okay, so it should say, give due consideration to the potential impact of the building of housing in flood risk areas, zones 2 to 3.
Yeah.
Are there any councillors wishing to object to or abstain from this vote? Please indicate your desire to object or abstain by raising your electronic hand.
Got Councillor Thomas, but I think that might have been from before.
Councillor Thomas, is your hand up from previously?
It's fine.
Okay. So as there are no raised hands indicating a desire to object or abstain, then this motion, which is the textual amendment, is carried. Councillor Gaunt, would you like to present your motion, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'm going to obviously avoid entering into childish attacks. I'm just going to start by going straight into quoting Conservative MPs, actually. So it's distressing for me to start this speech by quoting several Conservative MPs because I don't like to do that. But in February 2019, John Redwood MP said building on land most at risk of flooding was a very foolish thing to do, and it is obviously making the problem considerably worse. When consulted recently, Tory MP Lawrence Robertson said about new housing estates in his own constituency, all of that new housing is going to make flooding much worse. I don't think there's been adequate demonstration that they can contain the water in the new building work. Kieran Mullen, Conservative MP, said of building on floodplain that it is asking for trouble. And I would not need a lot of convincing, but I would need a lot of convincing that it is ever justified. He went on to state, it's no surprise, concreting over fields can make localised water drainage worse. James Bevan, the head of the Environment Agency, recently stated, properties should not be built on floodplain as far as possible, and some developments should never have been approved. The clue is in the name, floodplain, and we should insist that developments only happen when there is no real alternative. In December 2019, Boris Johnson threw housing plans into confusion, something that he's apparently got quite a flair for, by suddenly calling for a halt to construction on floodplains. He stated categorically on his campaign trail, and again, we need to be very careful about what was said by Boris during an election, but I will quote him, we've got to stop building on floodplains. Recent statistics show that 9% of the new residential homes have been built on flood zone 3 areas with greater than a 1 in 100 year flood risk. This is really worrying. And it's certainly an issue that Rushcliffe has been found guilty of, particularly through the local plan part 2. Greenpeace's chief scientist Doug Parr described this as planning for disaster with 10,000 homes earmarked to be built on flood risk areas. He states, that flooding has been flashing on the radar as one of the major impacts of the climate emergency in the UK for years and years, yet our planning system keeps failing to properly recognise this. In our local plan part 2, 2 major estates stand out in particular as falling foul of poor decision making and should never have been offered for development in the first place. Site 5.1, land north of Nottingham Road in Radcliffe-on-Trent, and site 6.1, land west of Wilford Lane or Wilford Road in Runnington, both fall mostly into Zone 2, with Zone 3 land running through the development sites. The planners may be able to happily state that all necessary consultations were undertaken, but I would challenge any of them to confidently state that these sites will never flood or that the surrounding houses will not be negatively impacted once they're built. We cannot allow this to happen again. This motion basically asks the council to take seriously the threat of flooding and to look at all other options before allocating land in the future. In the Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan, sites 12.1, 12.2 and 12.3, which have been suggested as options for development around Runnington, all fall into zones 2 and 3 and cannot possibly be considered and should be removed now before any future discussions occur. These sites are just the tip of the iceberg across Rushcliffe-on-Shore in the Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan. In 2018 to 2019, the borough declared a climate emergency. In December 2019, we agreed to support a motion reducing our investments in fossil fuels and to carry out an audit on the Borough Council's carbon footprint. In our 2014 to 2020 Climate Change Action Plan, we have looked very seriously at ways to reduce the causes of climate change in the borough, and we should be proud of this action. This motion calls on us to go a step further and look at how we mitigate the impacts of climate change. We can start this today by committing not to build on floodplain land that is most at risk from flooding. Flooding is getting more severe and more frequent as the worst consequences of climate change start to bite. Building on floodplain is not sustainable economically, it's not sustainable socially, and it's certainly not sustainable environmentally, and we have to ensure it doesn't happen in Rushcliffe ever again. So please support this motion that is calling for us to look and listen to consultees over this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gaunt. Councillor Walker, you just second the motion?
Yeah, I'd like to second this motion and my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Upton, I believe, wishes to speak on behalf of the Conservative group.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I have to say that when I first read this motion, I was somewhat surprised with it. Surprised because it's a pointless motion. We already carry out these consultations with our statutory partners, which is why, as far as I'm aware, in the last 5 years, there's been no significant flooding of our new larger housing sites. So with respect, Madam Mayor, can I suggest that this now goes to the vote, please?
So what you're asking for is for a vote to take place with no discussion. So I'm going to ask for if Councillor Gaunt wishes to, whether he would like to argue against that. Would you like to do so?
To argue against the idea of shutting down a motion without any discussion at all in a democratic setting? Do you want to set?
Well, it is in the Constitution that it can be asked to be moved immediately and go straight to the vote.
I would like there to be a debate.
It's at my discretion whether or not I allow you to argue against that. So my discretion is that I am allowing you to argue against that. Would you like to do so?
Yes, please, yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to do that now? Well, I don't think at the moment I don't think there is adequate evidence to suggest that none of the housing estates have been flooded because they've not yet been built, a number of them. It's difficult to have that discussion. The fields at Wilford Road have flooded this winter 2 days after it was passed at planning, and understand obviously that there's going to be mitigation measures put in place on that site, but all it will do is raise the land around of the floodplain and pour water onto the neighbourhood behind. And quite frankly, I don't understand why you would shut down a discussion on that. I believe that proper consultation hasn't really occurred because I did mention at that planning meeting that the data was from 2015 and there's been new housing built further upstream in these areas. and that is now impacting on flooding downstream. And I believe that before we get round to the Greater Nottingham strategic plan being put in place, the consultees will be coming back with better data. So you can shut the debate down if you want to. I think it's quite a useful thing for us to discuss. We have sites already in the Greater Nottingham strategic plan consultation as it's going forward that are clearly in floodplain. I mean, it makes no sense to have them there in the first place. Why not remove them? Why not say we're not going to use those sites? Why not agree to do that? Doesn't make any sense. So if you want to shut it down, that's fine. That's completely within your constitutional right. It's just a bit sad, isn't it, if you want to do that?
Point of order, please, Madam Mayor.
I'm not making that decision. I'm just saying that the Constitution does say that I could do that, and I've chosen not to. So I believe. What's the point of? Okay, I'll take the point of order, but then Councillor Jones wishes to speak.
Point of order. Closure motions 1411C. If a motion that the question now be put is seconded, which it has not been, and the mayor thinks the item has been sufficiently discussed.
Yes, I don't think it has been sufficiently discussed. So I don't, yeah, but you are quite correct. Thank you for pointing that out. Is there a seconder, please, Councillor Upton?
I'll second it, Madam Mayor. I could just make the point, we're not actually shutting down debate. We actually support the motion. It's just pointless because that's what we do anyway. And you know, talking about all the details about the different sites, we are not the decider of this. It's the people who decide this who we need to talk to, and that's exactly what we do. So it's just a complete pointless motion because that's exactly what we do. So I'm seconding this, and we just want to go to the vote because we'll vote and support it and move on.
Okay.
Could I clarify before? Could I just clarify what was just said? That's not to come back on anything. I just want to clarify.
Okay, sorry, it's the Madam Mayor, and we've seconded it, Madam Mayor. So yeah. It's up to you now, not to Councillor Gaunt to come in again.
Yes, no, I'm not allowing Councillor Gaunt to come in again. I think he just wanted some clarification on exactly what you were saying, Councillor Robinson. Do you mind just briefly repeating, Councillor Robinson, what it was? Are you saying that if a vote is taken, it is likely that it will be accepted?
Yes, that's what I actually said. Yeah, because it's a no-brainer, pointless motion. We do it anyway. We're committed to doing it. We consultate. We go to the consultees on all these applications, so we'll do it. Okay. And it's like saying I'll put a motion. Let's collect the bins every 2 weeks. Yeah, we do it. So I can't see the point of full council having debates like this about things we do anyway.
Thank you for the clarification. Do you still wish to speak briefly, Councillor Jones?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor, because the consultation isn't working and it is impacting on residents. And it's no good shutting this dialogue down. Much of West Bridgford and other areas of the borough are low-lying, and it's folly to allow construction on the most flood risk areas when sea levels are rising with the melting ice caps, and the impact will be felt widely in the foreseeable future. But the other folly is, and it's happening with developments here, and it's impacting on other residents, which is what's important, is in large developments, surface water runoff, including overflows from holding tanks, flows into ditches and drainage ditches, and then impacts on other residents. Surface water from newly built properties flow into a drainage ditch, which runs west into Ruddington. After heavy rain, it now floods back gardens up to people's doors and the fields of the primary school, St. Peter's in Ruddington. Surface water from part of the building to the east of Melton Road, sorry, to the west of Melton Road, overflows from a tank, flows down an old railway ditch, runs down the Green Line and into gardens on St. Helens Road. Again, after heavy rain, and this is caused by construction approved by this council after consultation. So there's two things here. The county council, their flood advice needs upgrading. but also this planning authority needs to be more aware of the risk and the downstream effects of new developments. And approval has been given in your ward, Councillor Robinson, for an office block to be built on a sustainable urban drainage system. On the argument that it's not needed.
Point of order, Councillor. It's not talking on the motion. Madam Mayor, we're supporting the motion. The motion says about consultation. It doesn't talk about individual sites and what's been planned and all the rest of it. Yeah, it's about the motion, what's in front of us,
okay.
And we're going to support it.
Yes. Okay. So can you very quickly draw to a conclusion, Councillor Jones? I think we all know examples of this type.
Yeah, well, I just think it's important that the County Council's flood risk management process is strengthened and the officers' awareness of flood risk surface water is also strengthened. And it isn't just about floodplains. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Does anyone else wish to speak, or shall we move straight to a vote?
It's your discretion.
Councillor Thomas? Briefly, Councillor Thomas, please.
Yes, I was also going to make the point in response to Councillor Upton that the flooding isn't on the developments, the new developments themselves. It is on existing housing caused by the new developments. And I'd just also like to say that the drainage strategies and flood risk assessments that accompany planning applications need to be thoroughly evaluated. It has to be more than just ticking a box to say that they've been provided by the developer, particularly in areas where there is risk of flooding to the development or to existing housing in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, do you wish to make any further comments? Councillor Jane Walker.
Thank you.
Right to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is room for debate with this. I think shutting down kind of is interesting. I think people will view that with interest, the people that you represent who are flooding, who want to see us taking action on flooding. Just having no action on flooding isn't good enough anymore. We need to actually say that we're not going to build on flood zones 2 and 3. And right now we've got plans to build on flood zones 2 and 3. That's actually in our plans. It's not good enough. It's not working. The enforcement's not working. And we need to look back on it. It's a shame that we can't even talk about that. But there we are.
Thank you. So we're going to move to a vote now on this motion. Are there any councillors wishing to object to or abstain from this vote? Please indicate your desire to object or abstain by raising your electronic hand. As there are no raised hands indicating desire to object. Oh,
we've got one, Councillor Robinson, but it may be from before.
Oh,
sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
It's all right. A desire to object or abstain, then this motion is carried. So item 12, questions from councillors to answer questions submitted by councillors under standing order number 11.2. Councillor Gowland, I believe you have your question.
There's a pressing need for a reliable source of IT support that our residents can trust, and many people would be happy to pay for ICT support from an organisation like Rushcliffe Borough Council that they trust. Can the council undertake a feasibility study into the possibility of providing a paid IT support and training service to the residents of Rushcliffe?
Thank you, Councillor Gowland. Councillor Moore is replying to your question, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's important to note that the council's ICT services are fully occupied with maintaining services and dealing with the effects of COVID-19 on the council. I have no evidence of a pressing need for this kind of service, and I'm happy that this need can be dealt with by the private sector.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Gowland?
Yes. So certainly I'm aware of many pressing needs in this area. I would like to ask again that you consider a small pilot study in this area. I'm not suggesting using existing resources, and yes, certainly it would be necessary to expand resources, And I'd like you to consider either internal services or even outsourcing. I think this would be a real benefit to residents and possibly a way of raising money, much needed money for the council. Thank you.
Do you wish to reply, Councillor Moore?
Yeah, well, very briefly, I mean, the colleges, the young people around here are pouring out of colleges. ICT, they know more about ICT than the majority of us. They're very entrepreneurial, setting up businesses. And I really think that this isn't something we should be getting into. We've seen examples from Councillor Robinson, the previous examples of getting into businesses for the wrong reason. The reason to get into this, there is not a pressing need. The pressing need is dealt with by the private sector. And I'm sorry, but it's not something we're going to get into.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. So that concludes the business for this evening, and thank you all very much for attending.